I heard something once at church. They said more people spend time planning their wedding than they do planning their life. And that's true if you really think about it. People sit down and they spend months. Who's sitting next to who, what color the cake is gonna be, what flavor it's gonna be, what color we're gonna wear, who's gonna be the photographer. But they don't do that with their own lives. I was about a 6-figure guy who had a 7-figure offer on the table to buy my business. And at the time, I wasn't even considering the 7-figure offer because I thought my business was worth 8 figures. So I was looking for an 8-figure payday at some point, and I was fine just collecting 6 figures on it yearly until I got there.
The legacy starts from a foundation you build from having the conversations and doing the work ahead of time. And that's the part where men have to ask themselves those questions when it comes to whether you are single or whether you are married. If you are single, you still have to ask yourself, what legacy do I want to leave? Because at the end of the day, your legacy is either going to be written by yourself or by somebody else.
If you could give yourself one key to success, what would it be? If you could go back and tell your 18-year-old self something, and I always answer the same thing, go find Karina Lou. Go find the right partner.
I once heard someone say, you can't prepare for it, but you can be prepared. And that stuck with me because so many of us, especially men, don't want to talk about death, or worse, we tell ourselves we'll deal with it later. But the truth is, later might not come. And for families who lose someone unprepared, that grief comes with a second blow, which is chaos. Today's episode is about the other side of that story. The man who didn't start with everything, but started preparing, not because he had everything, but because he started with nothing and knew he wanted to leave his family more than just memories when he was gone. This is Legacy Talks, the man you must become. And today's episode is called, You Can't Prepare for It, but I Can Be Prepared. I'm honored to welcome my guest today, Jay Cohen, a man who walked the path from scarcity to strategy, and who's making sure his family has the foundation to never have to know what it's like to feel the growing pains. Welcome, my man, because this is a different one. I want something spicy, and usually I don't do this. So Owen, I've actually really dove into to unpack like the story of how we met. I just kind of introduce them and then we literally like jump right into it. But I think, for the sake of the man that you must become, and this, I believe, holds a lot of context to just our conversations and how we met and how we connect and how it's important to have these type of conversations in front of people. And because we talk a lot, obviously off camera, but just having these type of conversations has helped me even become the man in this second leg and journey that I have. And I think that, how we met and us meeting is something that wasn't, I don't know, I guess it was serendipity. Because to this day, and this is for all y'all watching out there, my man don't want to give me a hat. He don't want to give me a sweater. I tried to buy a hat. I tried to buy a sweater and he just come wearing it around. So, I'm giving up, I said, what, I might go bootleg him and just start selling them out the back. I'm gonna buy a Cadillac and just go start selling them out the back of a Cadillac. But,
oh man.
Yeah, no. But this guy right here, like I was saying, I want you to give just a little bit of background about yourself, because normally for most people, I don't even dive into that, but I think it's key for you to just tell a little bit about yourself, your background, and what it is that you do, because it's going to help shape how we kind of navigate through this. So.
Well, thank you for having me on, man. It's a real honor to be on the show. My name is Jay Cohen. And for those of you guys who have no idea who I am, I'm just a regular Joe. I grew up in an urban suburb, 45 miles east of Los Angeles during a pretty weird time. I'm a 90s baby, I'm an 80s baby, but raised in the 90s. And, who am I? I am a proud father. I am a loving husband. I'm an investor, a philanthropist. And then a lot of people know me as an entrepreneur and day trader. So that's pretty much kind of like a little bit about like my business background from a educational standpoint. I hold degrees from, multiple universities. I don't really spend a whole lot of time in that because a lot of the stuff that I learned comes from street upbringing, honestly. And, outside of that, man, I'm just a regular guy. I'm a guy who just wakes up and goes to work, puts my shoes on like everyone else and gets right to it. So super excited to have this conversation.
Awesome. No, thank you for that. We've talked a lot about, obviously, preparation, and we've talked a lot about legacy, and we've talked a lot about, which is kind of one of the ways that we ended up connecting, is just having that alignment and being able to have those conversations that are relatable. And obviously, based upon where you're at now and where you were then, when you were starting from scratch and you were thinking about, preparation, and obviously for your kids or your kid at the time, what did preparation look like then versus compared to now, being that there's so much more just at stake?
Well, I think that as I started thinking about, this show and being on this show, I started, I didn't want to overanalyze it. And I think the biggest steps that I made early on, I was a father at 19 years old. And so for me, I didn't have time to really think. I just had to react. I was a child raising a child. And so some of the things I did early on were just, the honest answer was the best I could. That's all I did. Was I set up LLCs because that's what I saw to do online, or that's what I heard somebody say to do. That's where I started. And I don't want to skip that step because I feel like a lot of people still miss that step. I talk to a lot of people who are operating just under their name or some sort of DBA or something like that. And one of the biggest things that I did when I first started was I did structure myself accordingly. I set up LLCs and I didn't know what to do with them, but I was setting up my businesses to be operated as a company. I didn't know anything about S Corps, or which I'm sure we'll start talking about later. I didn't know anything about holding companies or trusts or any of those kinds of things. I didn't understand becoming a board member versus an owner. In our community, coming from where I come from the hood. So coming from where I come from, everybody just wants to be the boss. Everybody just wants to be the owner. You want your name on it. People name their businesses after themselves. It's Jay's Towing, Jay's Barber, Jay's, everybody wants to know Jay is the guy who owns it, right? Jay's Restaurant, Jay's Rib Shack. And so when I first started my businesses, I was, doing things like that. And I started in real estate primarily, but we could be on the show for 2 hours and I would tell you about the number of businesses I've had fail. So,
Yeah. And so in particular, because you mentioned trust, when it came to understanding, I guess, the preparation of, because when you obviously created a trust, you were thinking ahead for your family and you were thinking about asset. Maybe you weren't thinking about asset protect. Like, what were you thinking about at that time when it came to the legacy that that you would want to leave for your family, and that preparation then versus now? You're like, okay, this is how I have to structure. This is how I have to prepare. Because if God forbid something happens to you, this is all left in their hands. So,
yeah.
So back then, like, what was your thought process then about creating a trust versus now?
Honestly, I fell into it by accident. I fell into it because at the time I was married prior. I've been married one time prior to my wife now. And at the time we had started going through a rough patch, and I was talking to a business mentor of mine who, shout out to him, had told me, said, hey man, like, any of your businesses, you need to take and put it into a trust. And I didn't really know what I was doing, but he told me that, like, hey, we have some deals on the table and things like that. And you just don't want the deals to be interrupted because you're in the middle of a messy divorce or anything like that. You need to move the business into a trust and then move the sale of the business. Any proceeds that come, put that in the stipulations that the sale of the business also belongs to the trust. And this was a guy who was a multi-billionaire. So I was like, okay, no problem. So I moved my business into a trust, and a couple of years later, I ended up going through a divorce, and it was one of the biggest things that saved me. And all I was thinking of at that time was, man, I've worked very, very hard for the little bit. At the time, I didn't really have much. I was about a 6-figure guy who had a 7-figure offer on the table to buy my business. And at the time, I wasn't even considering the 7-figure offer because I thought my business was worth 8 figures. So I was looking for an 8-figure payday at some point, and I was fine just collecting 6 figures on it yearly until I got there. But in the meantime, I was like, I've built all of this and I want to make sure that my son at least benefits from it somewhat. At the time, I only had one child. And so I said, I just want to make sure he's set up for life. And I just didn't want him to struggle the way that I struggled. Nobody, when I got to college, college taught me a lot in the sense that I saw what money looked like. So I went to school on an athletic scholarship and academic scholarship. Everything was paid for by grants and scholarships. But then I had a roommate who was like, he was heir to the spam fortune, and his great grandfather had invented spam. And so the not spam mail, the spam, that nasty meat. So his grandfather had invented that, and his lifestyle was crazy. They were rich, rich. And I got to see what that looked like because I was like, wait a minute, you don't have a meal card? He's like, no, I use my dad's Amex. And I'm like, what? And then I saw that one day I thought he was doing some sort of fraud stuff because I saw a business name on there, and he's like, that's my dad's company. And I'm like, really? And I didn't understand anything. But once I was in college, because when you're growing up and where I grew up, you're just around people who are just like you. When I got out of that environment is when I got to finally see what wealth looked like. And I just was trying to do the best that I could at the time to just give my son that. That's all I really was looking for, was I wanted my son to be in college with his daddy being able to pay for his food and stuff like that. He didn't need to be on some sort of meal card or anything. And so fast forward, I sell the business and the money went to the trust. And it was good because then I went through a very messy divorce, and I realized how strong that trust was because she wasn't able to take anything that was left from my son. And that was the eye-opening thing for me. Now, the bad part of that was that I had wrapped it up so tight into the trust that I couldn't even touch the money. I couldn't. So I tell people that was the very first time that I was a millionaire, right? I had sold my business for millions, but I couldn't touch the money. I could touch the interest off the money, but I couldn't touch the money. I could leverage the money, but I couldn't go take the money out without taking massive penalties.
Yeah.
But it taught me a valuable lesson about, wow, this worked, because somebody had come after me legally who probably, if anyone had any rights to some of it, they had a heck of an argument, and it upheld in court. And I was like, oh, if this works here, it could work for something much bigger, like a lawsuit or something like that. And that's kind of how I got into understanding that I needed those things set up and in place.
So would you say that, like, so was that the moment where you got serious about just really planning ahead?
100%. Yeah, that was where, for me, I knew that the only way for me to, it was a gift and a curse, because I was so bothered that I had sold something, and I thought at the time, I'm like, oh, I'm rich. I'm just going to live off the interest for the rest of my, I never have to work again. And then I realized, oh no, this is not, number one, you realize that the money that you think is money is not enough money. And then number two, you realize that leveraging that type of money is much more powerful than the money itself. And so I was able to go get loans against it and things like that that helped me scale and made me what I am now today.
So now is the trust still set up for your current family and the assets are still in there? Or were you able to, because it was a non-revocable trust, I guess.
Yeah, it was irrevocable. So you had there, for those who don't know, there's revocable trust, irrevocable trust, bridge trust. There's multiple different types of trust. Well, the money that was set in that irrevocable trust, you can't, look at it like, somebody explained it to me like there's two sides of the street. There's life and death, right? Sides of the street. And then there's things that on an irrevocable trust that you could take from here to this side of the street, but once it's on that side of the street, it stays there. It just stays on that side of the street. A revocable trust, you can move back and forth. You can walk back across the crosswalk and all that kind of stuff. And so, yeah, the money that was in there originally is still there. I've been able to move it around because you still manage it. Like, it's not that you just can't touch the money at all. Yeah. I manage it and move it into different kinds of stocks and assets and things like that. I can diversify it well within the portfolio, but you just can't, and you can even take it out, but it's just going to be very penalized.
So what's the current setup now for, I guess, obviously?
Well, now I have multiple trusts. So now, once I realized that, it let me know what that did. And I'm actually glad that it happened, because I probably shouldn't have had my hands on that kind of money in my mid 30s anyway. So what it forced me to do, right, I definitely shouldn't have had that kind of money. So I'm glad it happened.
This probably would have been a different conversation.
So, but what it forced me to do was, one, keep working and keep hustling. Two, learn how to leverage it. And then it also taught me about trust. And so now I have a revocable trust. So I have a trust that's set up that holds, now I have a whole structure. I have what they call the corporate shield, right? So that's what it's commonly referred to as. So I have An irrevocable trust that I put assets that I never want to get rid of. I'll give you an example of what that is. I have an apartment building that's near and dear to my heart. I grew up in that apartment building. The landlord evicted my mother out of that apartment. I came back and bought that apartment and gave it to my mother as a gift. I put that in my irrevocable trust. I will keep that building forever. It belongs to us now. So that will get passed to my kids and my, so on and so forth. I have a small portion of a wealth portfolio that's in there that's irrevocable. That's mainly comes from the sale I just talked about. Then in my revocable trust, I have a lot of my assets set in there. And that's like my portfolio, my trading portfolio and all that kind of stuff is held by the trust. And then I have what's called a bridge trust, which is a trust that bridges over to another country. And what that will do is if things ever got crazy here in America, or God forbid, you have to pack up all your stuff and get out of America at some point in time, you could just move your assets just with the push of a button through a bridge trust. So it just moves it from one country to another. And then I have my holding company. So now my revocable trust holds my holding company. My holding company is structured in a way to give me some level of, what's the word?
Asset protection?
It's asset protection, but yeah, keeps me kind of out of the fold of it. It keeps another company, shielded from me. Yeah, there you go. And then under that you have my LLCs, and then under my LLCs you may have a few DBAs or something like that. So it's like, now you have this ladder of companies that now control my entire empire, if you will.
So also when it comes to, I guess, life insurance and wills and everything, do you have that broken down in a way where that is all actually under the trust and owned by the trust as well too?
Yes, that's correct. Everything is ran through the trust. So I have my trust set up in a way that really protects my family for the long haul. Right now, I'm sure we'll get into the part of the conversation later on, but my biggest thing is getting my family ready for if I'm not here. And, you can't be a generational curse breaker if it just stops for one generation. If after me, my family goes back to being broke, I've been able to get us out of that point. Now my family we're doing just fine. And my great grandkids will do just fine as long as they don't mess up what I've set up in place. But yeah, the trust and all that stuff is held in the trust holds the will. It also it also has certain triggers for that will. And it also, what was the second part you asked me that did it hold?
Just the life insurance and
the life insurance. With life insurance is weird. Life insurance is great for somebody who, if you have, let's say you're a 6-figure or low 7-figure person, life insurance is definitely a win. It's a super win. It's a way for you to kind of give your family like some trajectory into at least the competition. But once you reach another financial level, which my family and I have been fortunate enough to reach, life insurance really is just a tax cover. Because when you pass away, your family still will get hit with certain taxes on various assets. And you use the life insurance because let's say it costs me $500,000 for my life insurance policy, but it gives me $3 million worth of coverage. Well, if I get hit with $6 million in asset taxes and the death tax, whatever that's called, if I get hit with that, then I want to use insurance to pay for it versus, use it out of my actual assets.
Yep. So when it comes to like legacy planning, like most people assume, because obviously what you just talked about is having a foundation, and most people assume that it's all or nothing. But the process of actually starting, like they don't feel like they can start if they don't have anything. They feel like they shouldn't start.
No, that's absolutely false.
Yeah. What's your thoughts on that? Where when it comes to starting before you accumulate everything versus people think, well, I don't have, especially in our culture, they think, well, I don't have anything to protect, so I'm just not going to start until I make some money.
Yeah, but, I think there goes one of the biggest mistakes that people make, right, is that they don't plan until something happens. So what happens typically in our community is people go and they start our community is geniuses. People that come from where we come from are absolutely geniuses. And what they do is they take and they head off and they start this business and they're just hustling. I get it. You're a hustler. So you're hustling. Well, then it turns into something. And then you get hit with a lawsuit. And then you're like, man, I need to protect it. That's too late. It's too late. Right? Or you have a great idea and you take and you start working on it. And we just want to get it out. We want to get it. We're the first to get it into people's hands. and then we didn't properly structure it. Then it gets bootlegged or somebody else repeats it and there's nothing you can do about it. A lot of these companies that are not like us, that are maybe the other nationality, they protect their ideas so that even if you do my idea better than me, I'm going to sue you because it was my idea in the first place. And I can just live for a very long time, and my kids' kids can live for a very long time based upon intellectual properties I set up for myself. So some of the things that people can do early on is really simple. It's just getting an LLC. It's doing things like putting a will together. If you die and you have a barbecue restaurant, think about it. Think about it like this. Like, how many times have we seen in our community people who own some really good rib shack or hair salon or something like that, and they pass away, and then their family in 6 months has destroyed the business, or they financially just tear it all up, or they're fighting over it, right? Yeah. It's very easy for you to, with my family, there'll be no fighting because everything that I want done is going to get done. There's nothing to fight about, right? You just get what you get. Yeah. And the problem is we see in our community, I had a good friend of mine called me not that long ago. They're fighting over 30-something thousand, about to break up their whole family over $35,000 or something like that. I'm like, man, it's just not enough money to fight your family over.
Yeah. And I think that it also happens because the conversations haven't happened. Obviously, the conversations and most of the time in our communities haven't happened because of the mindset and the education around preparing for something like this. So the chaos erupts and it happens. What would you say that you still haven't done yet as far as setting up yourself for, setting up your family for, in the event that your absence is not here, that you haven't done yet that you still want to do?
I get better with my family about how to leverage it. My family knows it's there. Their name is all on it. But just like I said a minute ago, if I die and all the information dies with me, then it dies with me. And so my next chapter of life right now is just really pouring as much as I can into them so that they know how to manage our wealth as well. I can do it. If I live to 100, we'll be just fine. Yeah. If we live to 100, we will outpace. We'll be so far ahead that we won't ever have to look back. But I may not. I just lost my father last year, and he was 74 years old. And it just, it definitely hit really, really close just because of our relationship. And it made me start to realize that, like, I'm on borrowed time. And so that's something I really need to do. Is I really need to teach my family how to manage it, because having it set up is one thing. How to manage it is a completely different thing.
I agree. And I would say that is probably why that rose to the top of your priority list. And I explain that to people all the time, that the context of your experience actually starts to prioritize the things that you understand that need to be done. Most people don't have any experiential context to where they're at in their life. And they think that their life is just based around their bubble, not understanding that life is happening around you and to you, no matter if you choose to engage with it or not. It's still going to happen. So the preparation that you do is not predicated on waiting for it to happen versus preparing for it. As we said, like, you can't be prepared, but you can prepare yourself for when that does end up happening. So what I want to move down, because it's funny, like, certain people, as I'm going through, I always like to make sure that there's certain things that I'm covering, but as you're flowing like a master weaver, you're actually touching a lot of the things that I think are important points of which I hope people can, when they listen, they're listening to why these things became a high priority of your consciousness because of you losing your dad. And I always tell people, which is the same thing, for me, it was something that before I lost my wife, it was already part of our daily, weekly check-ins and routines. But then after I lost her, it became this platform to help other people understand that as you lose your dad, as I lose, like, don't wait for that what if to happen, like, start preparing that now. And that's why I always say, like, legacy planning is not just about documents. It's about the people who we are protecting ahead and the information and the knowledge that we're giving them to be able to carry on after. So has the process changed the way that you show up as a father and a partner now?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I just was blessed with a little girl a year and a half ago. I had my daughter, and that changed a lot for me because I knew I had to get healthy. I'm still on my weight loss journey, but I eat a lot healthier. I watch how much sugar and stuff like that I consume because I know that I need to give my daughter about 40 more years. And if I can do that, then I know that she will have all the tools that I need to put into her. As far as being a husband, you and I talk about it all the time. My circumstances have allowed me to really just cheer on my wife and allow my wife to just try everything that she wants to do. What I say, like, I don't care if she wants to be a Ninja Turtle, right? Like, I don't care. I just want her to live a very soft life. My wife is a hustler in her own right. Her name is Karina Luna. She just does phenomenal things. She's a genius, actually. But she lived a hard life before I came along. And like I tell her, that all that stopped when I showed up, and I wanted the rest of her life to be a soft life, but it won't be soft if I don't pass the information to her. I need her to be able to know what gears and levers to pull, because there are certain levers that have to be pulled in the event something happens to me. She needs to pull the brakes on certain things, accelerate on other things, and she needs to know all those things.
So have you actually had a conversation with her, or actually had this conversation about transition or legacy planning?
Yeah. Her and I talk about that a lot. The good thing is, like, I thought I had it here on the desk, but we have a full, like, plan. We have a bindered plan of what happens, who we call. You call the attorneys. The attorneys have all the information. There's X amount moved over to a safe deposit box here if you did, because you know how attorneys are. Attorneys can get messy. I'm going to have a cousin that comes out of nowhere that says, oh, he promised me half his fortune, and then my wife's going to have to fight it all off and all that. I don't foresee it. I've been blessed with the fact that I don't have this huge family, but you just never know. Yep. And in that, not only that, I take care of a lot of people. I take care of my mother. I take care of a lot of people. And so my wife needs to know that I'm taking care of those people and how to continue. I don't want anyone's life disrupted. Not only that, we have hundreds of employees that work for us. I don't want their life interrupted. So, you have to diversify out. I have assets held in cash, crypto, gold, and of course the stock market, right? And then obviously just funds that you have in your businesses. But being diversified out gives me the opportunity to make sure my wife can get her hands on multiple things to keep everything we have going.
So I've heard you say something which is ironic, because me and my wife did the same thing. We would have these household meetings, and but we talked about this too on the treadmill. Like, our spouses, our wives, like, they are just different type of people, and they're just different type of people. And I think, which is unfortunate that I'm seeing my friends go through what they're going through right now. And I think one of the struggles that they've had is having that synchronicity with their spouse, especially when it comes to like household meetings, and understanding like the house is ran as a business, and the house has to align. It has to balance out from emotions, financial, like everything. What advice would you give people out there that are watching, specifically men? Like, what would you give the man? Because they struggle with this. Like, what advice would you give them on how to have these type of house meetings with their spouse? And what are like 3 things that you would give them that they can implement and at least start the conversation? Because I'm telling you, when I tell you, like, you might be the only other person that I've met that, because this is a huge gap when it comes to married people, but they don't understand why their business, their household is ran so rapidly.
You start with small conversations, and I think the first conversation you have is, hey, can we have these conversations? Yeah. Are these the conversations that, interest you? And I think that a lot of women are they don't even know it, but they're yearning for that. They want that. Women in natural state want to be led. They want to be submissive. I think that that's something that's a natural, innate thing for most women. And they want a man who will step up and say, hey, listen, like, I'm really guiding this conversation, but I can only do it with you. And so go to your partner and see if you can have those conversations. If you can't, I would say you're with the wrong partner. Sure. The second thing, I'm sorry.
No. I agreed. I said, I agree.
The second thing that I think that you can do is be disciplined in those conversations. I heard something once at church. They said more people spend time planning their wedding than they do planning their life. And that's true. If you really think about it, people sit down and they spend months who's sitting next to who, what color the cake is going to be, what flavor it's going to be, what color we're going to wear, who's going to be the photographer. But they don't do that with their own lives. If we be honest, how many people are sitting around all the time and saying, hey, what's your 3-year plan, honey? Like, where has that changed in the last 2 years? I have a lot of friends and I don't hear them having those conversations. I'm lucky now because I'm in a circle of people who are pretty much financially in the same space. So now it's a lot more common for me to hear those conversations. But I remember on my climb to the top, I didn't hear those conversations at all. Husband goes to work. He's the manager of Verizon Wireless. Wife is a administrator. She's a dentist. She's a dentist. She has $500,000 in medical school loan debt. And they live a pretty decent life, right? He's a district manager and she's a dentist, and they're just going to work and they come home and they kiss each other, they eat dinner, and then, they have sex on Tuesdays because that's the day that the kid goes to sleep early. And then they go on dates on Thursdays, and that's life. And then they die. But they're not having those conversations to say, hey, like, where's you have that much debt? How are we paying that down? How are we going to leverage it? This is what my goals are for 2 years from now, 3 years from now. And if you are having them, there are usually times, if you think about it, if people really think about it, there are usually at times where people are arguing. Yeah. And that's the wrong time to have the conversations. They need to be consistent, monthly, quarterly conversations. My wife and I have a quarterly check-in where we sit down and we break down the books. This is what we got. This is what we don't. This is what we don't have. This is what's moved over. This is what's coming in. This is what's going out. This is what we put away. So having the conversation after step one is having the talk. Can you have the conversation? Step two is being disciplined to have those conversations consistently, because a lot of people start it and then they fall off. And the third thing is holding each other accountable. Can you hold your partner accountable for the things that they say they're going to do? My wife and I, we just had a conversation. My wife told me, I'm going to have X amount of dollars saved up 2 years ago. I said, okay. Hey, honey, I hit that goal. I said, cool. Now let's double it. And I want you to do it in half the time. And she didn't. And we're like, hey, like, are we looking at all the spending we're doing? Because we have goals that you said you want your life here. And is your goals aligning there? Once you took it to here, you kind of like, you got here and then you went on cruise control. We can't have that. I need you to continue climbing if that's where we're going to go. If we're not going to go there, then let's have that conversation and say that we plan on our life being here. And are we willing to settle on our life being here? It's okay. Our life is good. So I'm not tripping.
And I think that, especially on those last two parts that you just said, there's questions as men that you have to ask yourself is, are you okay with the life that you have? And you have to be okay with that answer that you give yourself, despite what somebody else is telling you. You have to be okay with that. And then you also have to be okay with conflict, because you cannot move through a marriage without conflict. And if you are afraid to have conflict, then you then have to step back and look at where your trust is at and where the foundation is at, because it requires conflict to move forward. And that's just in life, business, marriage, it requires conflict. And the conflict is predicated on how you are preparing. Like, would you rather have the conflict now to prepare your family for your absence, or for them to have the conflict with people who had nothing to do with what you guys have built, and now you're having conflict with them? Like, the conflict is going to be inevitable, but who you have the conflict with is going to determine the peace you have moving forward. Yeah. And I think that brings me to a question which we talked about as well: the emotional cost of preparing our family and preparing ourselves, especially when it comes to the thought of them not having to be here. So us having to be here. So I'm curious and want to hear from you. What's the emotional cost and the emotional toll now, being that you are financially stable, versus somebody that's watching who is financially unstable and feel like the emotional cost is going to change once they get the money?
Well, I think that there's like a misconception here, because when I was coming up broke, I was just kind of like, well, I mean, what do they got to worry about? They're rich. It's quite the opposite. Once you're rich, it's a lot more to worry about. It's why you see rich people take their life all the time. And you see, like, they just couldn't do it. They just, they took their life and all that kind of stuff, right? It's like, The pressure, like if I lost it all, if the manager that we were just talking about in my last question, if the manager there at Verizon Wireless, if he lost his job, his family will bounce back pretty quick. You know what I mean? You go use your resume, go get another job. If I lost what I am to my family right now, it would devastate the entire family. I have people and family members who work for me, family people who live in places that I own. I have my mother dependent on me. My daughter's life is cushy as hell. She's, you know what I mean? Like, my son knows that he can be whatever he wants to be because he can jump and leap and do whatever he wants to do because he knows his dad has already set the cushion really high. So the emotional toll of me thinking about them not having me, it actually makes my life feel shorter because I feel like I'm running out of time every day.
Mm.
I feel like it's not enough time for me to get everything in place that I need to get in place so that their life doesn't, because I don't want it to shake, rattle, or anything. I don't want the chef to stop coming. I don't want the nannies to stop coming. I don't want nothing to change when I leave. And you feel like you're running out of time. And I'm only 44 years old and I'm healthy. And I take good care of myself. Go to the gym every day. That's how me and you met, right? But it doesn't mean that I don't think about that all the time and how big of a loss it would be to my family if something happened to me.
So, and I just want to give context. I'm a context guy. For the people that are watching, and I know that this is a different type of episode, but I think that this is imperative to understand. And I'm glad that we've kind of been weaving in and out of different things because I think that most people think the woes stop when you make the money. And most people think the weight lessens when you make the money. And I've tried to explain this to people that you have no idea. And it's taken out of context so much. One of the greatest philosophers to ever walk this earth by the name of Christopher Wallace, he says, "Mo money, mo problems." And people don't really understand what they think that the problems, they don't understand the type of problems that occur when you reach a certain financial height. But I also believe that the weight of that weight in understanding that when you are with the instability, you have to still make the same type of preparations for your life. Because as you just heard him say, he doesn't feel like he has more life because he got more money. He feels like his life is shorter because of the emotional weight that he has to carry to make sure that he is here to get the preparation that needs to be done for his family in the case of his absence. And that's the thing I want people to understand when it comes to legacy building. Legacy doesn't start when you get the money. The legacy starts from a foundation you build from having the conversations and doing the work ahead of time. And that's the part where men have to ask themselves those questions when it comes to whether you are single or whether you are married. If you are single, you still have to ask yourself, what legacy do I want to live? Do I want to leave? Because at the end of the day, your legacy is either going to be written by yourself or by somebody else. And that's a question that I wanted to ask you. When it comes to death and transitioning and legacy, have you thought about what and how you would want to be remembered? And what would you want people to say about Jay?
Yeah, yeah, I have thought about that. And all I really care about when it's all said and done is people know that I was a dedicated husband, a loving father, and I did it the right way, the hard way. I didn't cheat. I didn't sell drugs. I didn't have to go play basketball. I didn't have to go be some Hollywood freak to get what I got. Yeah, I ain't on no Diddy list. I ain't on any of those kinds of things. I did it the right way and the hard way. And most importantly, all I really care about, and that's something I tell people all the time, is even with all of this, I don't care about none of it. I just want my kids to know that they daddy loved them and everything I did when it comes to money had to do with for them. I just want my wife to, if I die, I want my wife to spend the rest of her life knowing that she will never replace what I was. I don't care if she decides to remarry. If it happened to me now, I'd hope that she would go find love. I love her enough to go see that for her. But I just want her to know that there's not a chance in hell she's going to find somebody that loved her the way that I do. And I was once told something that would stay with me forever. And that's, your legacy either ends at the period of that obituary and the last laugh at your funeral, or it lasts beyond the time that anyone who's ever known you will remember. And that's all I really care about, is that somebody way down the line will be benefiting and going, I don't know who the hell my great granddaddy Jay was, but he was a bad mother. He was a bad mother. Whoever he was, he did his thing.
So 2 things. I'm going to land this plane because I know we can just keep going.
We can't.
Yeah, we could keep going. But the 2 things that I want to touch on before we do land this plane is, and I can't wait to show you, he's actually going to show me this preview today. I had an artist create a painting, and this is something that which when I tell you guys where to find him at, you guys can follow him. But these conversations, morning convos with Jay, I think that this is something that maybe we can join together and do this for our communities. It's called the oil paintings. And me and my wife talked about this 9 years ago when we first got married. And I actually had him take pictures of my wife, my son, and my daughter. And I had him create this oil painting that will live in our family and be passed down. So when our great grandkids look at the oil painting, because if you look at all these back in the day castles and houses, they're like, no, that's grandfather Jay. We wouldn't be here because of this. That's your that's your great grandfathers. And that's the same thing for my kids. Like my sons' sons, like I want them to look back and be like, no, that's grandma Asia and grandpa Jason. Like they're the ones who laid this foundation. And that's called the oil painting effect, is what he's talking about. Is he wants to have that oil painting effect, which transcends his lineage, be far and beyond, where there may be step cousins and half brothers and adopted sisters that's like, no, that's my grandpa. Like I'm related to him somewhere down the lineage. I'm related to him. So that is something that I think, as I'm going through this process and getting that done, I think challenging people to do that and then having that on their wall, and them now knowing that they're going to think one of 2 things from that painting. Either I'm in this situation because of you, or I'm in this situation because of you.
Yeah.
Either you made the preparation and had the conversations, or you didn't make the preparation and you didn't have the conversations. And then the second thing before I land the plane is the reason why, which obviously through this conversation that me and you had, is a lot different from the other previous episodes. But the reason why I wanted to just allow it to just flow and even just jumped off of my guideline is because I want people to really understand you made the point of the actual name of this podcast, which is The Man You Must Become. And when I tell people this, and this is me not even having to ask you the questions, or me, even when I'm asking you the questions, the answers that you're giving me are because you've asked yourself these questions. And this is what I continue to keep trying to tell people, is that the man you must become comes from asking yourself the hard questions. And when you ask yourself the hard questions, then you have to actually address, acknowledge, go deep to figure out who that man is, to be able to stand in that gap when that time comes. And that's why this is the byproduct of what that looks like when you ask yourself those questions. If you take the men's deck and you ask yourself these questions, this is the byproduct of that. This, and looking at me, this is the byproduct of that. And it's easy for somebody to say, well, yeah, you've gone through, this is somebody who has a completely different circumstance and situation. He's asked himself those hard questions that shaped him into the man that he is today. So in closing, I want to say thank you for your honesty. Thank you for walking us through not just what you've done, but what you're still working on. And to every man listening, preparation isn't fear. It's about love. It's about action. It's about saying, when the day comes, and it will, my family won't be scrambling. They'll be supported, they'll be equipped, and they will be prepared. So here's a few legacy prompts that I want to leave with you guys that are watching. What have you prepared for that your younger self never imagined it would be needed? What unfinished business keeps you up at night? And who are you protecting when you plan ahead? I want you guys to really look at those, take those questions, look at those questions, and sit with those and journal those questions, because those are the questions you need to start asking yourself. For people watching, Jay, where can they find you at?
On all my socials is Jay Did the Deal. JayDidTheDeal. Jay Did the Deal on Instagram, TikTok, and that's the only two I really use. I'm really a simple guy, man. In fact, the goal is to get off. The goal is to get away. They also can see me and my wife. We have a podcast, Couple Moves Away, on YouTube. Couple moves away. Just means you're just a couple moves away from whatever you're trying to do. So, yeah.
I like it.
I appreciate you having me, man. Is the card game ready, or are we ready to? Can we talk about that or no?
No, we can talk about it. It hasn't launched yet, but it just actually reminded me. I want to get you a deck. I need to get you a deck, because actually, the men's deck, I want to get you a deck, and I want to get you the family deck for Karina. But the final product is here. It came in after literally a week ago after we did the shoot, when I was waiting for the shipment to come in. So I'm excited about having the actual final tangible product in hand. It's been a lot of work to get to this place, but I believe this is going to be, it's this conversation that we had. It's learning how to have the answers like you did to these conversations by asking yourself these questions. So I do need to get you this deck. And I want to thank you guys for listening. I encourage you to rewatch this. And once again, focus on the context. And I would even say, for people that are watching, get the deck, order the deck, ask yourself those questions, go through those questions, and then watch this interview and see how his answers align with those questions. And as you just said, he hasn't even seen the deck yet, and he has been answering those questions in the deck, which is why it's just so important for men to really ask themselves those questions. So thank you. I appreciate you. And I will see you soon, but I will see you guys as well. And thank you guys for tuning in, and we will see you guys on the next episode.
Thanks a lot. Appreciate you having me.